The cardboard box fell onto the porch floor with a dull thud. Inside it was everything Beatrice had accumulated in 32 years of work: worn-out shoes, 3 patched Maid uniforms, a rosary with faded beads, and a yellowed photo where she held 3 babies in her arms. The same babies who now, grown and well-dressed, watched her from the top of the stairs as if she were an intruder. "Ma'am, you understand our position, don't you?" Andrew, the oldest son, adjusted the gold watch on his wrist without looking her in the eyes. "This house is worth $2 million. We can't waste that value keeping you here." Beatrice felt her chest tighten. That house wasn't worth $2 million when she arrived, pregnant and desperate, begging for work. It wasn't even worth $200,000 when she cleaned baby vomit off those Persian rugs that Andrew now stepped on with Italian shoes. It was worth nothing when she spent sleepless nights taking care of them through fevers, colds, while their real parents traveled to Paris, Rome, Tokyo. "But I raised you." The words came out weak, almost a whisper. "I bathed you, taught you how to tie your shoes, made dinner every day for more than 3 decades. And you were paid for that." Catherine, the middle daughter, crossed her arms. Her perfectly done nails shone under the chandelier light. "It's not like you did it for free. You had a salary, a roof, food. You had a roof. As if that tiny little room in the back, without heat in the winter and without ventilation in the summer, was a favor. As if eating their dinner leftovers was a privilege. As if $300 a week, without vacation, without days off, were enough to erase the sacrifice." Beatrice looked at Thomas, the youngest. That boy had slept in her arms when he had nightmares. She had run with him to the hospital when he broke his arm. She had cried with him when he failed his driving test for the 3rd time. He looked away. "We talked to a lawyer," Thomas murmured, staring at his own hands. "Technically, you don't have any legal right to anything. You worked here, but you never had a formal contract. You can't prove." "Prove what?" Beatrice felt something break inside her. "Prove that I gave up my own life for you? Prove that I lost contact with my family, with my friends, with any chance of having my own house, my future, because I was busy building yours?" The silence was cruel. A silence full of truths no one wanted to acknowledge. Catherine checked her phone. Andrew sighed impatiently. Thomas stared at the floor. "Look, we found a place for you," Andrew said, pulling a paper from his pocket. "It's a retirement home 40 kilometers away. It's not bad. There are activities, other people your age. I'm 58 years old. I don't need a retirement home." "Well, you also can't work here anymore. The new family is bringing their own staff." Catherine was already walking down the stairs, clearly bored. "You have until Friday to leave. That's 3 days. Enough time to pack your things." Pack your things. As if 3 decades could fit into a cardboard box. Beatrice picked up the box from the floor, her knees cracking with the effort. None of them offered help. As she walked to the gate for the last time, she heard Catherine talking about renovating the kitchen and Andrew laughing at some joke on his phone. As if she had never existed. As if those 32 years were just a footnote. It was only on the bus, as the rain began to fall, that Beatrice remembered the letter. A letter that had arrived 3 weeks earlier, from a law firm in a small town 2 hours away. She had put it away unopened, too busy. The letter talked about an inheritance, about a distant uncle named Vincent, about a property. She pulled the crumpled envelope from the bottom of her bag. Her hands trembled as she tore the paper. The words danced on the rain-soaked page, but one sentence stood out: inheritance left in your name, property located in. Beatrice closed her eyes, allowing herself, for the first time in decades, to imagine something different. If you are enjoying this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video, and leave in the comments what you thought and which city or country you are watching from. As the bus continued down the dark road, she didn't know that that cardboard box would be the last poor thing she would ever carry. She didn't know that Vincent had kept more than just an old house. And she definitely didn't know that, in weeks, it would be Andrew, Catherine, and Thomas calling, desperate, begging for a chance she had no intention of giving. The dirt road seemed endless. Beatrice held the crumpled letter while the taxi rattled over holes and loose stones. The driver, a white-haired man with calloused hands, looked in the rear-view mirror with curiosity. "First time in town?" he asked, swerving around a chicken that was crossing the road without any hurry. "First time coming to visit this property," Beatrice replied, looking out the foggy window. Empty fields stretched as far as the eye could see. A few scattered houses, broken fences, an abandoned barn. So different from the city where she spent 3 decades cleaning marble mansions and perfect gardens. "Ah, must be old Vincent's house." The driver nodded, as if rummaging through memories in his head. "Poor guy. Died alone there about 2 months ago. No one from the family came to visit him. They didn't even show up to the funeral. Just me and the priest, if you want to know the truth." Beatrice felt a tightness in her chest. She didn't even know she had an uncle named Vincent. Her mother never mentioned him. No one in the family mentioned him. How had she spent her life taking care of strangers and ignoring her own family? "Here it is." The driver stopped in front of a low construction made of clay bricks. The walls were cracked, the roof missing tiles, the front door crooked on its rusty hinges. Tall weeds grew all around it, taking over what must once have been a garden. Beatrice paid the fare and stood in front of that ruin, unable to believe what she was seeing. Was this it? A house falling apart in the middle of nowhere? She thought about Andrew, Catherine, and Thomas. Thought about them laughing, drinking expensive wine, planning how to spend the $2 million from the sale. Thought about going back, begging, accepting that spot in the retirement home where they would treat her like a number. No. Beatrice pushed the door. It creaked, but opened. The interior smelled of mold and dust. There were pieces of furniture covered with white sheets already gray with dirt. A solid wood table in the center. An old armchair near a broken window. A tiny kitchen with a stove that looked from another era. But it was hers. For the first time in her life, she was in a house that was truly hers. Beatrice ran her fingers over the dusty table. Solid. Well built. Vincent might have been poor, but he wasn't careless. The walls, despite the cracks, were thick. The floor, though dirty, was made of wide planks. There was something honest about that house. Something the mansion never had, with all its expensive decoration and coldness. She started exploring. 2 small bedrooms. A bathroom that needed renovation. And a basement. The basement door was locked with a rusty padlock. Beatrice searched the house until she found a bunch of keys hanging on a nail in the kitchen. The third key opened the padlock with a satisfying click. The wooden stairs groaned under her feet. The basement was dark, damp, full of stacked boxes and old tools. But at the back, against the wall, there was something covered with a thick tarp. Beatrice pulled the tarp away. Her heart stopped. There, stacked on metal shelves, were dozens of wooden boxes. She opened the first one with trembling hands. Inside, wrapped in cloth, were small leather pouches. She opened one. Gold. Gold nuggets. and stones that shone even in the little light coming through the dirty window. Beatrice opened another box. More gold. Old jewelry. Silver coins. She opened a third. Property documents. Land deeds. Investment certificates with amounts that made her head spin. Her legs gave out. She sat on the cold floor, surrounded by a fortune she couldn't comprehend. Vincent wasn't just a lonely old man. He had been smart. Quiet. He had accumulated wealth in ways no one suspected. And he had left everything to her. There was a letter at the bottom of the last box. With trembling hands, Beatrice began to read. Dear Beatrice, if you are reading this, it means you found what I kept. Forgive me for never introducing myself. I followed your life from afar, through acquaintances, through stories that reached me. I learned how you dedicated your life to caring for those ungrateful children. I learned how you gave up your dreams, your family, your happiness. I saw in you something rare, genuine kindness. And kindness like that deserves to be rewarded. Use this wisely. Use it to live the life you always deserved. And please, don't waste it on those who don't deserve it. With love, your Uncle Vincent. Beatrice read the letter 3 times. Then 4. Tears streamed down her face, leaving clean trails through the dust. Upstairs, her phone rang. It was Andrew. She looked at the name flashing on the screen, took a deep breath, and hung up. Not today. Maybe never again. She had work to do. A whole life to rebuild. And now, finally, she had the resources to do it. 3 weeks later, Beatrice was unrecognizable. Not just on the outside, although the cut and dyed hair, the new clothes, and the modern glasses made a difference. It was something internal. The way she held her shoulders. The way she looked people in the eyes. The tone of her voice when she spoke. She hired a renovation team for the house. Not to demolish it and build a mansion, but to restore it with respect. The clay walls were reinforced and painted white. The roof got new tiles. The windows were replaced with glass that kept the heat inside. The wooden floor was sanded and varnished until it shone. The small and humble house transformed into something cozy. Simple, but dignified. Just as Vincent would have wanted. While the workers hammered and sawed, Beatrice began to get to know the town. The bakery where the owner, Mr. Martinez, woke up at 4 in the morning to make fresh bread. The pharmacy run by a young woman named Lisa who studied at night to become a nurse. The small grocery store owned by Mrs. Ruth, a widow raising 3 grandchildren on her own. Real people. Struggling. Surviving. Taking care of each other in ways Andrew, Catherine, and Thomas would never understand. Did you know Vincent? Mrs. Ruth asked one day, bagging Beatrice's groceries. He was my uncle. But I only found out after he died. That's a shame. The woman shook her head. He was good. Always helped whoever needed it. Never showed off. But when someone was in trouble, there he was. Quiet. Kind. Beatrice smiled. She was starting to understand who Vincent really was. And she was starting to understand what he expected her to do with that fortune. In the 4th week, Andrew called again. She answered this time. Mom. Finally. We've been trying to talk to you for a month. I've been busy. Busy? Busy with what? Look, we need to talk. That place we found for you, they're charging a reservation fee. $500. Can you transfer it? Beatrice looked out the window of the newly renovated kitchen. Outside, Mrs. Ruth was crossing the street carrying heavy bags. Beatrice saw when one of the bags tore, spilling oranges onto the sidewalk. She saw the desperation on the woman's face. Those oranges were probably the grandchildren's snacks for the week. No, Beatrice said calmly. Silence on the other end of the line. What do you mean no? I'm not going to transfer money to you, Andrew. But it's just $500. You worked for 30 years, you must have some savings. Beatrice almost laughed. Savings. As if $300 a week had left anything after buying medicine, basic clothes, hygiene products. I have money, she said. But I'm not giving it to you. What? Why? Because you never cared about me. None of you 3. I'm not your mother, Andrew. I was your maid. Cook. nanny, cleaner. All that for a miserable salary. But I was never treated like a mother. That's not fair. We always. Always what? Invited me to Christmas dinner? Gave me a birthday present? Asked how I was? When was the last time you hugged me, Andrew? When was the last time you looked at me and saw a person? Another silence. Longer. Heavier. Things are going to change around here, Beatrice continued. I'm going to use my time and my resources to help people who really need it. People who show gratitude. People who treat others with dignity. If you want to be part of my life for real, you'll have to prove you see me as a human being. Until then, don't call me asking for money. She hung up before he could respond. Her hands trembled. Her heart pounded fast. But there was something else. Something she hadn't felt in decades. Pride. Beatrice left the house and helped Mrs. Ruth gather the oranges. Then discreetly, she filled 2 bags with groceries and handed them to the woman, saying she had bought too much. Mrs. Ruth cried. Hugged Beatrice. Thanked her 5 times. That was it. That feeling. That real human connection. That was what had been missing during 32 years cleaning that mansion. That night, Beatrice sat at the wooden table that had belonged to Vincent and began making plans. A community daycare for working mothers. Scholarships for young people like Lisa. Monthly food baskets for struggling families. Renovation of the abandoned community center. She wasn't going to waste this second chance. She wasn't going to let bitterness consume the gift Vincent had given her. And she definitely wasn't going to let Andrew, Catherine, and Thomas lay their hands on a single cent. Unless they learned. Unless they changed. Unless they proved they could see beyond their own selfishness. The phone vibrated. A message from Catherine. We need to talk about your immature behavior. Beatrice blocked the number and went back to making her plans. She had important work ahead of her. 2 months passed in absolute silence. Beatrice received no more insistent calls. No desperate messages. No contact pretending concern. As if Andrew, Catherine, and Thomas had finally accepted that she was no longer the obedient and submissive maid. But Beatrice knew those 3 better than they imagined. Silence meant planning. It meant strategy. The confirmation came on a sunny Friday afternoon. Beatrice was supervising the daycare's opening when she saw an imported car park in front of her newly renovated house. 3 well-dressed figures stepped out. Expensive suits. Serious expressions. Determined. Her stomach tightened instinctively, but she didn't run. She didn't hide behind excuses. She stayed exactly where she was, watching the happy children play on the new colorful playground. Andrew was the first to approach her, his Italian shoes sinking into the damp soil. He stopped at the entrance of the daycare, clearly uncomfortable and out of his element. Catherine and Thomas came right behind, looking around as if they were visiting a foreign and hostile country. So this is where you're wasting your time, Andrew said, trying to sound casual and unconcerned but completely failing. It's not a waste. It's purpose. It's life. Beatrice didn't get up from the bench. What do you really want? Catherine took a calculated step forward, holding an elegant folder. We need to talk about your financial situation. My financial situation is none of your business. It is when you're being manipulated. Thomas crossed his arms. We investigated. This so-called Uncle Vincent? He was involved in questionable business. That money could be illegal. Beatrice felt anger boil, but kept her voice calm. Vincent was an honest man. You know nothing about him. We know you inherited a considerable fortune. Catherine opened the folder, showing documents. And we know that, as your family, we have the legal right to contest this inheritance. Especially considering your mental state. My mental state? You spent 30 years in a position of servitude, Andrew explained with fake concern. That may have caused psychological damage. You might not be capable of making such important financial decisions. Beatrice finally stood up. Slowly. Controlled. She looked into each of their eyes. Mrs. Ruth appeared at the daycare door, followed by Mr. Martinez and Lisa. Other residents began to approach, forming a protective barrier around Beatrice. Is there a problem here? Mrs. Ruth asked, staring at the 3 strangers in suits. It's none of your business, Catherine replied with disdain. Beatrice is our business, Mr. Martinez said firmly. She's family. Family. Andrew laughed, incredulous. She worked for our family for 3 decades. You've known her for 2 months. And in those 2 months, Lisa said, she's done more for us than you ever did for her in 30 years. Beatrice felt her eyes burn. But not from sadness. From gratitude. You can try to sue me, she said calmly. You can spend your time and money trying to prove I'm crazy. But that won't change the fact that Vincent chose to leave this inheritance to me. He knew me better than you ever cared to. And I'm going to honor his memory by doing exactly what he expected. I'm going to help people who deserve it. I'm going to build a community. I'm going to live with dignity. You're going to regret this, Catherine threatened. The only thing I regret, Beatrice replied, is wasting 3 decades on you. The silence was absolute. Andrew opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. No words came out. Thomas was the first to step back. He looked at Beatrice for a long moment, something different in his eyes. Shame, perhaps. Let's go, he muttered. Catherine protested, but Thomas was already walking back to the car. Andrew hesitated, looking around at the people surrounding Beatrice. This isn't over, he said, without conviction. For me it ended a long time ago, Beatrice replied. She watched them leave, the car kicking up dust on the road. When they turned the corner and disappeared, Beatrice felt something unexpected. Absolute freedom. Mrs. Ruth took her hand. Mr. Martinez put a hand on her shoulder. Lisa smiled. Are you okay? Mrs. Ruth asked. Beatrice looked around. The daycare. The children playing. The people who truly cared. Yes, she said, and for the first time in decades, it was completely true. I'm more than okay. 6 months later, the transformation of the small town was impossible to ignore. The community daycare served 40 children whose mothers could now work in peace. The renovated community center offered free classes in computer skills, English, and cooking. Lisa had graduated as a nurse and worked at the clinic that Beatrice helped equip with modern devices. Mr. Martinez expanded the bakery and hired 3 employees from the community itself. Mrs. Ruth no longer had to choose between food and medicine. Beatrice didn't do everything alone. She simply opened doors that had been closed for years, gave opportunities that had been forgotten, believed in people when everyone else had given up. And the community responded with honest work, sincere dedication, and gratitude. On the sunny morning of a cold November Saturday, someone knocked on the door hesitantly. Beatrice opened it and found Thomas standing on the wooden porch, without the expensive suit he always wore, without the arrogance he always carried. He seemed smaller somehow. More vulnerable. More human. Can I come in? He asked, his voice low and hesitant. Beatrice didn't answer immediately. She studied his face carefully, looking for signs of hidden manipulation. But all she saw was deep exhaustion. Real shame. Something that might be honesty. Come in, she finally said, opening the wooden door all the way. Thomas stepped inside slowly, with careful steps, looking around the simple but cozy house full of life. So different from the cold and empty mansion. He sat down when Beatrice pointed to a wooden chair, his hands nervous and restless on his knees. I came to apologize, he began in a firm voice. Not for the last few weeks. For the last 3 entire decades. For everything. Beatrice poured hot coffee in silence, waiting patiently. She had learned that actions were worth more than words. After we left here, Thomas continued, accepting the cup, I couldn't stop thinking. About how we treated you. About how we never questioned whether you were happy. If you had dreams. I had dreams, Beatrice said, sitting in front of him. I wanted to be a teacher. I wanted to travel. I wanted to have a family of my own. But life took me down a different path. Because of us. Because of our indifference. No. Because of circumstances. I made choices. Some out of necessity, others out of love. Because I loved you 3 like children. But you never saw me as a mother. I was always just the maid. Thomas lowered his head. Andrew and Catherine still don't understand. They're angry, talking about lawsuits. But I understand now. I saw what you built here. I saw how people talk about you. I saw what it means to be valued. And what do you want, Thomas? He raised his eyes, and Beatrice saw tears. I don't want your money. I didn't come to ask for anything. I just wanted you to know that at least one of us finally woke up. Finally saw you. The silence wasn't uncomfortable. It was the kind of silence where healing begins. Where forgiveness becomes possible. You can stay for lunch, Beatrice offered. But you need to help prepare it. Here, everyone gets their hands dirty. Thomas smiled for the first time, a genuine smile. I'd love to. While they cooked together, something simple like soup and bread, they really talked. About his life, about mistakes, about how he was trying to be better. Beatrice shared stories about Vincent, about the legacy he left. Do you think Andrew and Catherine will ever understand? Thomas asked. Maybe. Maybe not. That depends on them. I can't force anyone to grow, to change. I can only live my life with dignity and hope it serves as an example. After lunch, Thomas helped wash the dishes. Before leaving, he hugged Beatrice. A real hug, long and tight. Thank you, he whispered. For everything you did. And sorry it took us so long. Beatrice watched him leave, his car disappearing down the road. She didn't know if Thomas would keep this new perspective. She didn't know if Andrew and Catherine would change. And she realized it didn't matter. She had built a new life. A life with purpose, with real connections, with true love. She had a community that saw her, that valued her. At night, sitting on the porch of her house, Beatrice thought about Vincent. About how he had been right about everything. About saving that fortune for someone who deserved it. About kindness being rewarded. About it never being too late to start over. If you liked this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and like the video and leave in the comments what you thought and which city or country you're watching from. The lesson was simple but powerful. Dignity cannot be bought, respect cannot be begged for, and true family is recognized not by blood, but by presence, by care, by love shown through actions, not empty words. Beatrice was finally completely free now. And more importantly, she was finally truly